Hello and welcome to another edition of Read with Ronald. Today I will be talking about Sense and Sensibility and Pride and Prejudice. Now the thing is, I'm not really going to be going through the plots of the books all that much because I read those books years ago. I'm really here to talk about these two adaptations that I watched over the weekend, which was the Sense and Sensibility adaptation that aired on Hallmark and Pride and Prejudice Atlanta that came out on Lifetime in 2019. Before we get into it, I'm going to give a spoiler warning just in case because I don't know how much of the plot I'm actually going to talk about, but just in case I do want to give a spoiler warning just to let y'all know I might spoil the plot. I'm just saying. And I'm going to be real. The reason I'm talking about these two adaptations is specifically because they were black adaptations. I'm not even going to lie. Let's talk about how we got here, right? So Pride and Prejudice I've had since I was about 13. Got it because of the Sweet Life and Zack and Cody episode. I'm not even going to lie. I watched that episode and then one day I was in Goodwill with my mom because, I used to get my books from Goodwill. So I saw the book on the shelf. I'm like, hey, that's the book from Sweet Life and Zack and Cody. I get the book and I'm like, okay, I'm going to take it home. I'm going to read it. So I open it. I read the first chapter and I realized that this book is very much advanced above what I was reading at the time. Because, I was reading books that was targeted at my age. So like Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Percy Jackson, stuff like that. I didn't end up reading Pride and Prejudice until I was about 19 for the first time. But when I read it, I didn't really understand like the full context of why we was doing all of this over marriage. Like I told one of my friends, I was like, this whole thing is drama over marriage, but I'm invested. But I didn't have the full context because I didn't understand why they was doing the most over marriage. Fast forward to 2022. I'm reading classic literature to write my book, The Disappearance of Derek Harrison, which is the second book in the Creek series, which, by the way, go check that out if you're looking for a great series to read. I promise it's worth your time. It's well written, well researched, all of that. I'm doing my research for that, right? So I read Pride and Prejudice that year, as well as reading Sense and Sensibility for the first time. So the second time I read Pride and Prejudice, I had more of an understanding of the context of the time period, the culture, all of that. So when I'm reading the book, I'm catching a lot of what I missed out the first time, and I'm finally understanding why it's so important for these girls to get married. The reason I got Sense and Sensibility is because I read Pride and Prejudice, and I was like, I want more. And then I just never read it until 2022. I enjoyed both books. Eleanor is one of my favorite heroines. She's definitely the one I relate to the most as far as characters go. Marianne, I liked her. If I can be honest, Marianne low-key remind me of my sister. From the Austen books that I've read so far, Eleanor is definitely my favorite, but I like all of the girls so far. So let's talk about the books specifically. I'm just going to give a quick little synopsis of each book. So Pride and Prejudice is about Elizabeth Bennet. She is the second oldest of 5 sisters. Jane, who is her older sister, and then her 3 younger sisters, Mary, Catherine, and Lydia. Elizabeth is the prejudice in Pride and Prejudice. The Pride is Mr. Darcy. And the reason why they're the Pride and Prejudice is because Elizabeth, she's not really all that great at reading people and who they are. She tends to be very wrong about people's characters when she first meets them. And Mr. Darcy, very proud in his position in society. Kind of sort of tends to think some people are beneath him, not like out of meanness, but just because that's how he's been raised to think. The story revolves around Elizabeth and her sister Jane, to be honest, a little bit. It's really about their mom trying to get them married off, because what's happening is that their father did not do his job as a father and save up money for their dowries, because he was under the impression he was going to have a son to leave the whole estate to, but he didn't have a son. So now he got 5 girls. He ain't got no money to give them when they get married. And so their futures are not secure, and their estate is set to fall into the hands of his cousin, Mr. Collins. And unless Mr. Collins is very nice, he can come and turn them out the house when Mr. Bennet dies. So Mrs. Bennet is trying to get the girls married off to secure their futures so they don't end up on the street and poor. So basically the story starts off with Mr. Darcy and Mr. Bingley and Mr. Bingley's sisters coming to rent Netherfield, right? Keep in mind, Mr. Darcy is old money, Mr. Bingley is new money. Mrs. Bennet is super excited. She don't care about old money, new money. All she knows is they got money. She basically decides to push Jane towards getting with Mr. Bingley, because when they meet, they form a connection. Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy, they have kind of a rocky start, because before they even met, she overheard him say that she was not that cute. And so that kind of, hurt her feelings. So that's basically why they are off to a rocky start. And so the book is about them getting into these relationships. Of course, a whole bunch of other stuff happens and goes on in the book that leads to Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy realizing they were wrong about each other, and that, they slowly fall in love, and Jane and Bingley, of course, eventually get together and stuff like that. But that's basically what the book is about, right? It's about them trying to secure husbands so that they don't end up poor and alone on the street. Pride and Prejudice Atlanta. So I'm watching Pride and Prejudice Atlanta for the first time, and I'm excited to see how this goes. It has a lot of people that I know.
He who findeth a wife findeth a good thing. Amen.
First of all, they casted the perfect person to play Mrs. Bennet. Whoever made the decision to cast Jack Hay, you got it right. But I will say, I find it interesting that Jane is now a single mother, because in the book, that would have made her instantly unmarriable. So I find it interesting that in the update, she's a single widowed mother. So far, the movie seems okay. Do y'all hear the music? That is the Sims 3 build mode music. I cannot believe this. So we're on an ad break, and apparently Lizzie and Jane live apart from the family. So I'm kind of wondering why Mrs. Bennet is so desperate to get them married, outside of just wanting to find them good men. If they live apart from the family, they already live on their own. Baby, they done jacked the whole Sims 3 soundtrack. Ooh. What just happened is Lydia's a hot mess, as usual. But I came to say that they done made Mrs. Bennet and Mr. Bennet a lot more loving than they were in the book, which I appreciate. I had a question. How old is Lydia supposed to be? Because she's sitting up here drinking Hennessy out the bottle like it's nothing. Sitting up making innuendos, sitting up doing a lot. I'm very interested to see how this thing with Wickham's gonna play out in this adaptation, because they've already met. I don't remember them meeting that early in the book, but they've already met here, and they're kind of already starting to like build a relationship. So I'm kind of interested to see how this is gonna play out. I guess because of who they cast to play Lydia, I was kind of just like maybe assuming she'd be like her age that she was in the book, which was 15. At best, I'm assuming she's like at least 18. But since she's doing all this, I'm like, is she over 21? So then how old are Jane and Lizzie? How old is Mary and Kitty? How old is everybody supposed to be? Because I'm confusion. But so far, the movie is following the storyline for the most part. Of course, they made all the updates to modernize it. For the most part, I'm enjoying it so far. So that's Collins. I hope he is not still their cousin. I think this is the one time I hope the adaptation make this change. I hope he is not still their cousin. So of course, since I'm hoping that Collins is not their cousin no more, of course that means their house is not going to be entailed to him no more. So it's like, well, why are we in such dire straits? But the thing is, the family's not in dire straits in this movie. Mrs. Bennet just wants them to get married because she's just a busybody mama that want her daughters to get married. But Collins's part, I like the little twist that they've done with him, because he still has a relevance to the plot. Now, instead of being a threat to their house, he's a potential threat to their church, because he wants to take over pastoring the church. He claims the Lord has told him to do this, to go and be the next pastor of their church. But I find this quite interesting. Y'all, look who they casted as Lady Catherine. I wonder if she's still called Lady Catherine in this adaptation. I know she finna kill it. They did Jane a lot dirtier in this adaptation, okay? In the book, Bingley just kind of just like dipped. This man straight up said, girl, we just gotta break up. Like, no, I'll come back, no nothing. Sir, you just going to a tennis tournament. You can come back. Poor Jane. Not Mrs. Bennet actually excited about Charlotte marrying Collins. I'm shocked. So the reason I'm shocked is because, Mrs. Bennet, in case you've forgotten, Collins is plotting on your church. Like, have you forgotten your church that you are first lady of? Like, Collins is trying to move in on y'all territory and try to take over your church. Like, have you forgotten? Don't you want to leave that to one of your daughters? I'm just saying. Y'all, Wickham actually got Lydia pregnant in this adaptation. Like, ooh. I mean, it was implied that they were sleeping together in the book before marriage, but she didn't get pregnant. But in this movie, with as much advance in technology that has been since that book came out, the fact that she's actually pregnant in this adaptation, I am shocked. Let's see how it's gonna go.
I can't think of anything better.
Baby, they making Lydia seem like she got a little bit more sense in this adaptation, even though she ain't got no sense for real. Because let's be real, Lydia was dumb enough to get pregnant, but she talking about oh, I don't really like George like that. Why should I have to marry him if I don't love him like that? It was just supposed to be casual. He ain't got no money. What am I going to do? I'm like, baby, who is this? Because this ain't Lydia. Lydia ran off to get married to Wickham because she was like, I'm going to be the first one married with people who didn't care that Wickham ain't have not a lick of stitch or nothing. But in this adaptation, she like, he ain't got a lick of stitch or nothing. So what I'm finna do? Why I'm finna marry him? He ain't got nothing. I'm like, oh, shoot. Not to make Lydia a little bit smart. A little bit. I spoke too soon. She's still a little bit smart, but she wants him. He just don't want her. Like it was in the book, but okay. Not Wickham and Darcy are actually cool in this adaptation. Like cool with each other. Hold on, let me see, because last time I spoke too soon. Lydia says she ain't getting married to Wickham. I'm like, oh. Okay, deviation from the book. That girl said that is not happening. You gonna have to earn me first. I'm like, okay. I feel like we could have did so much more with this plot line. I feel like all of the direness has been taken out of the plot. Like with this, for example, Lydia is a preacher's daughter and she just got pregnant. It's supposed to be this scandalous thing, but it's not really being treated all that scandalous. She got pregnant by a rapper who just bought and owns a nightclub. And she's a preacher's daughter, but it's not really being treated like the scandal that it should be, like it was in the book. Even though she didn't get pregnant in the book, but it was still a scandal because of the time period and because of Lydia being dumb enough to run off with Wickham, who had no money. But in the movie, it's just like, oh, she got pregnant and she's made up her mind on what she's gonna do. Everybody like, okay, cool. And it's like, baby, where is the scandal? Where is the scandal? So Bingley just showed up to get back with Jane, right? He said that Darcy, because Darcy intervenes like he did in the book, but in the book, Darcy took Bingley away because he was like, I don't like her family. They ratchet, they ghetto, and they are not who you want to be involved with. I mean, Jane's nice and all, but no. In this movie, Darcy told Bingley, you know, you have a history of running away from relationships. If you're not going to be serious about Jane, don't lead them on. And Bingley left. And I'm just like, so wait a minute. So Bingley, if you weren't serious about Jane, what were we doing for the first half of the movie? Y'all was just having fun. Y'all was kicking it. Y'all was on Wickham and Lydia time. Like, I'm confused. Let me finish because I paused mid-speech.
Miss Bennet, do you know who I am?
My nephew has jeopardized his election quite enough, thank you. Will is the pride and joy of our life. We have a plan for him, always have, and you will never be a part of it.
Are you threatening me?
I don't threaten. Don't try me. Do not try me. Not the one.
She's not the one. That's what happened. I don't know how I feel about that being the final battle of Pride and Prejudice. We'll have to see.
Are you gonna let your pride get in the way of lifetime happiness?
We've lost the plot. We've lost the plot. That is not what the pride is supposed to represent. So I just finished the movie. I liked it for what it was. But tell me why I forgot Caroline Bingley was in the movie. She was at the wedding. I was like, oh shoot, I forgot all about you. Weren't you supposed to be like the rival for Darcy? Like you didn't do nothing. When I saw her at the wedding, I was like, why are you at the wedding? And then I had to remember she was Bingley's sister, so of course she's gonna be at the wedding. I liked it. It was cute. What I can say is that if you expecting like Pride and Prejudice, it is, but it's not. That's how I can put it. I did like it. I thought it was cute for what it was. For adaptation, I give it a 3. Only because even though it's a modernized adaptation, they did make a lot of changes to the story. I kind of wish they had gone there some more in some places. It didn't really have the direness of the situation that the book had. Like in the movie, Mrs. Bennet just wants them to get married because she just wants them to get married. Like she wants her daughters to find some men and get married. And the thing is, there's a lot of instances where they could have put the direness in there. Like for example, Mrs. Bennet wrote a self-help book about finding a man, and she just so happens to have 5 unmarried daughters. The situation could have been like, y'all need to get married because I need to prove that my book worked. Or they could have been like, she wants grandkids. You know, that could have been a good modern equivalent. She wants some grandkids, but that's not really a factor either because she already has a grandkid through Jane, who is a widow in this adaptation. Or even like Mr. Collins being a reverend, they make it a storyline that Mr. Collins wants to take over preaching the church after Mr. Bennet retires from preaching. They could have made that the direness of the storyline. Oh, y'all need to get married so we can secure the church. They could have did that some way. Been like, y'all need to get married so we can secure the church because Mr. Collins coming in trying to take our church. That's really my only thing about it, is that the movie really doesn't have the direness of the situation of the book. And it was just Miss Bennet wanting to get married because she wanted to get married. But I did like the movie for what it was. I thought the acting was good. The cinematography, there were some shots I liked and thought were interesting, but it was mostly like pretty generic cinematography. Not bad, but not really nothing to write home about. The soundtrack had me laughing because it was the Sims 3 soundtrack. Like, I recognized the build mode And when you like click on the map in the game at night, and that was the music they used in one scene. I'm like, so y'all jacked the Sims 3's whole soundtrack? Like, where's the original score? I feel like they did a good job updating it for the time period, but I do feel like some things got lost in the update. Like Caroline Bingley's whole reason for being there got lost. It was one point I forgot she was in the plot. She showed up at the wedding at the end. I was like, oh shoot, I forgot you was in the movie, Caroline, because she didn't do nothing in the plot except for like that one time where she tried to sabotage Lizzie by giving her a too short dress. Lady Catherine was not as effective as she should have been. Like, she showed up for the final battle of Pride and Prejudice, but the final battle was kind of a little bit lacking. She basically said, Elizabeth, don't try me. I will ruin everything for y'all. Don't try me. She didn't do nothing. I mean, granted, she didn't do nothing in the book either at that point, because Mr. Darcy put his foot down and was like, I'm marrying her whether you like it or not. She really didn't have no real effect on the plot. One change I am glad they made is that Mr. Collins was no longer their cousin. I would never be mad about that in a modernization. And of course, because they cut all of like the cousin marriage plot lines, of course Lady Catherine no longer had a daughter now, so that didn't matter. I also want to add that Wickham was made out to be like a good guy in this adaptation. He was more so treated like a smart man that just lost his way for a little bit, but in the end he decided to do right by Lydia of his own accord and not because Darcy forced him to like he did in the book. And also Darcy and Wickham, they were cool in the movie. Like, they actually considered themselves to be brothers, even though Wickham was adopted into the family. But they actually treat each other like brothers. They're really cool with each other. They even encourage each other to do right by the Bennett women. Like, Wickham had a whole character change in this movie. He was not as dastardly as he was in the book by any means. It was okay. As a movie, I give it a 4. For Sense and Sensibility, I'm just going to read the back of the book thing. So it reads, Jane Austen's first published novel, Sense and Sensibility, is a wonderfully entertaining tale of flirtation and folly that revolves around two starkly different sisters, Eleanor and Marianne Dashwood. While Eleanor is thoughtful, considerate, and calm, the sense, her younger sister is emotional and wildly romantic, the sensibility. Both are looking for a husband, but neither Eleanor's reason nor Marianne's passion can lead them to perfect happiness, as Marianne falls for an unscrupulous rascal, and Eleanor becomes attached to a man who's already engaged. Startling secrets, unexpected twists, and heartless betrayals interrupt the marriage games that follow. Filled with satiric wit and subtle characterization, Sense and Sensibility teaches that true love requires a balance of reason and emotion. So that's the basic synopsis. Basically, both of the girls need to get married, but the reason they need to get married is because they have an older brother, John, who is from their dad's first marriage. They are the daughters from the second marriage. They also have a younger sister named Margaret. So basically, what ends up happening is their dad, he's dying, and he can't leave the inheritance to all four of them equally. He has to leave it to their brother. Well, their half-brother. And the reason I say it like that is because that's how everybody in the book refers to him, as their half-brother, because they don't really have a close relationship like that. So he has to leave everything to their half-brother, right? And so their brother, instead of honoring their dad's wishes of, taking care of the girls and their mom by giving them their inheritance, their brother's wife, Fanny, she instead convinces him to keep the money for himself and be like, well, your dad didn't say how you had to help them, so, just do something small for them and claim that you're helping them, right? And so that's what he decides to do, but it backfires on him because they end up not needing the help that he's willing to give because they can do it themselves. And so what ends up happening is that's the reason they need to get married, is because they are broke and they're homeless because Fanny has had them turned out of the house that they are living in. And so that's the situation behind why they are looking to get married. With that being said, the movie, I was very excited for Sense and Sensibility's adaptation. I first found out about it in January, and I was looking for any information I could about it, but I couldn't really find nothing until it got closer to the time for the movie to air. I was super excited about it, but I was a little bit nervous because it was Hallmark, number one. I was also nervous it was going to be just a copy paste of previous adaptations and not really going to be its own original thing. I was nervous for it because I wanted it to do well. But my nervousness was also offset by the fact that I had seen movies from the production company that was actually behind the movie. It was another production company that made it. So I had seen movies from that production company and from that director previously that I had liked. So I was like, okay, it might be good. And then, I've seen some of the actors and other things, and they've given really good performances. So I was like, okay, it might be okay. And then it was part of the Mahogany brand. And I've seen some of the other Mahogany movies, and I've liked the Mahogany movies. So I was like, okay, it's part of Mahogany. Mahogany hasn't let me down yet. so it might be good. And so as more stuff about it started coming out, it made me more confident it was going to be a good adaptation. Then we got the sneak preview. I watched that preview so many times. It makes no sense. I was just excited about the movie, right? Y'all, they're showing a sneak peek. I'm so excited. So it finally comes, it airs, I'm excited, I'm tuned in, I'm watching it live. Oh my gosh, it's time! Oh, look at Eleanor.
My eldest daughter.
Look at Marianne.
Do you love him?
I think very highly of him. Greatly esteem him.
Esteem him? Like him? Cold-hearted Eleanor, shall I throw you from this carriage to get you to admit you feel something?
You're going to wake Mother Meg.
Not they killed Lady Middleton off in this adaptation. I'm not even mad at it because she really didn't do nothing in the book.
Look what we've been reduced to.
She talking about reduced. This is extravagant.
Stop. We have a lovely new home. We're very fortunate. I was
That's very nice.
Park. What am I now?
There's Colonel Brandon. Ugh, it's Willoughby. Look, they kept Anne. Oh wow.
You flatter.
Baby, she is playing Lucy still. And she is playing Eleanor.
Ferris are engaged. I know, it's come as a great surprise.
We're on commercial break right now, but I am enjoying this movie. Everybody's killing it. Everybody's doing a good job. It's so good. One thing they have done is made Edward Fanny's stepbrother for some reason. I'm not entirely sure what that does. But I'm very surprised they kept Anne still. I thought they were going to cut her. But no, she's actually here. So that's very surprising, which means we're probably going to get the accurate depiction of how they actually found out about Lucy and Edward. So that makes me excited. But yeah, I am so enjoying this movie so far. It is so good. It was definitely worth the wait.
Eleanor, I'm sure you have a busy schedule full of appointments, but you must promise to come.
Of course, John. And I always keep my promises.
Catch it.
Please excuse me.
Can't imagine him refusing if he knew.
That's why they made them step siblings.
In spite of how he likes to portray himself, Edward knows his place and would never be with someone beneath him.
Ooh.
I can't stand it. Mrs. Ferris, you are without a doubt the most... Don't I make you miserable too?
I'm sitting here like, why did they make them step siblings? And now I see. Now I see. It's my favorite scene.
Lucy and I are engaged, and we have been these past 4 years.
Engaged? Yes. Peasant. But before, she's only after your wealth. I do.
I mean, she ain't lying. She ain't lying.
Fanny, allow me to explain the state
What's
of
the
things.
point? Y'all are old money.
I will amend my will and leave everything to Robert. You will get nothing. This I swear.
All right, Lucy finna get to work. Oh, look at Lucy's face. Anne, what you still doing sitting there? You get to move in too.
Well, what are you waiting for?
My favorite scene. Baby, this was my favorite part of the book.
These men, how alike they all are. Keeping such secrets from the women who truly love them. You knew.
I did. Lucy told me herself the day we met them.
At Barton Park. That was ages ago. How have you borne this burden so easily?
Do you really think this has been easy for me? John was not the only one who had promised a father. And I, unlike our brother, have done everything in my power to keep that promise. Since the very moment we were cast out of Norland Park, I have buried my every desire, ignored my every wish, while you, Marianne, have thought of nothing but yourself. I love him. There, I've said it. But I also love you, Marianne, and I love Mother, and I love Meg, and I knew this knowledge would break your heart just as it broke mine, so I endured the secret that was forced upon me by the very person who caused my heartbreak.
Ruined all my hopes.
This is not easy.
Y'all stressing my poor girl out. That's why she's my favorite. She's the most relatable to me. Eleanor is truly the only child in her family with some darn sense. That is sad.
Once my inheritance went to my brother.
So did Lucy.
So Lucy is now Mrs. Robert Ferris.
Oh.
You're not married.
No. Eleanor.
Yes, give my girl what she deserves.
Eleanor. I will will not marry for fortune, nor out of obligation. I want to marry for love. And I love you, Eleanor. Eleanor Dashwood.
Will you marry me?
Will you do me the great honor of becoming my wife?
Yes.
I pronounce they be man and wife together.
Oh, that was a good cut. The movie was phenomenal. Oh my goodness. I enjoyed that so much. I'm happy. I'm satisfied. I'm so glad they did such a good job with that. That was great. That was amazing. I think that's going to be my favorite version now. I don't care. I was very satisfied with that movie. I would give it a 4 for adaptation because they did have to make some cuts, really only because for time. Like, they had to cut some parts of the plot, but the overall plot is still retained. It's still there. They honestly kept some parts that other adaptations have cut, so that made me happy, and that eased my concerns that it was going to be a copy-paste of other adaptations, but no, it was really its own thing. I really enjoyed the adaptation. I enjoyed the acting. The acting was phenomenal. It was great. The actress that was playing Lucy Steele, she really killed it. Like, she really brought out, like, Lucy Steele's character, like that nice nastiness about her. She really brought that out. She really was really good. But everybody was really killing it. I will say though, I have been laughing ever since I watched it because of Mrs. Dashwood. Look what we've been reduced to. And I'm looking at that cottage. I'm like, Mrs. Dashwood, this is a nice cottage. This is nice. What are you talking about? This is nice. This is better than the cottage that some of them other adaptations got. Y'all got it good. I will say though, I think it's funny how they were very ambiguous about the ages of the characters. Also, they changed Fanny and Edward and Robert to being step siblings instead of being biological siblings. I thought that change was kind of interesting because, you know, the whole point of the adaptation was it was supposed to be a colorblind casting because the Dashwood sisters and their mom are very clearly black, but their dad and their brother are white. And so it's obviously not supposed to matter in their case, in their family, but then you get to the Ferris family and it matters. I just thought that was interesting how, like, it's not really supposed to matter with the Dashwoods, but it is supposed to matter with the Ferrises. I thought that was interesting. It didn't really hurt the story all that much, but it was an interesting change. Cinematography was great. The soundtrack was great. The score was great. There was one part where they played like SWV's Weak, but they made it like a violin instrumental. So when I was listening to it, I was like, wait a minute, I know this song. Hold on. So I thought that was cool. Dr. Vanessa Riley needs a special shout out for her part as historical consultant because she killed that. She did an amazing job as the historical consultant.
Well, I went for nerd and they allowed me to be full nerd for them. So we talked about mannerisms. We talked about the ways colors were used in order to reinforce class. We talked about hairstyles. We talked about fashion silhouettes. And then just some of the economies of scale, like the differences of living in grandeur at Norland Park than to be reduced circumstances. So making everything feel as real as possible, So we looked at, the sets were immaculate sets. They actually built a pianoforte just for some seats.
Her work is a huge part of the reason why this adaptation was so successful. But everybody involved just did their thing. It was a great movie. And that's why as a movie on its own, I give it a 5. I got done watching it. I was like, I want more. I enjoyed both movies. I liked the fact that we got to experience these classic books with fresh takes on them, whether it be a modernization like Pride and Prejudice Atlanta or a period piece that takes place in the time period just with black people like Sense and Sensibility. I enjoyed both of them. There was a lot of complaints about the Sense and Sensibility adaptation. Some people like, oh, it's not going to be accurate because the skin colors aren't correct.
It's funny because I feel like she's so constrained, but Eleanor's so relatable. I feel like a lot of women walk around constrained and just wanting to breathe, wanting to exhale, wanting to just, give themselves to love, wanting to be free of all the things that are put on us from day to day to day to day. And so for me, it kind of, when I got into it, it made sense. I had the mindset at first, like, I can't do this, because obviously I don't see people who look like me doing, roles like this, unfortunately. But as I read it and talked about it with my team, I was like, wait a minute, why not? they thought, Tony thought, why not? Why can't I, do something like this? And so when I got into it, I was like, this makes perfect sense. Everything that Eleanor was going through, I could relate to. It made perfect sense, So yeah, it felt right. And I love the fact that people, little girls who look like me, can see themselves, can feel like, why not?
What led to me wanting to make this video was I was reading a lot of the negative reactions to Sense and Sensibility. Also, Hallmark had a Jane Austen themed month, so this is not the only Jane Austen themed movie that aired on Hallmark. And I watched the other 3 movies that aired on Hallmark. I liked some of them. One of them I didn't like, but I find it hilarious how the reviews for the other 3 movies are like very positive, like, oh, it was nice, it was cute. Everybody was like, oh, well, it wasn't really all that close to the book, but it was a cute little twist on it and stuff like that. But Sense and Sensibility, which stuck very close to the book, did a very great job telling the story. It's the worst reviewed one because it's not accurate. And I'm like, Sense and Sensibility was the closest to Jane Austen than the other 3 movies were, if we're gonna be honest. I decided to be curious one day and just go watch a video of a critic and see what they had to say. And they was making a complaint about Sense and Sensibility and why it wasn't accurate. But one thing they said that had me like crying was like, they were like, if we gonna make an adaptation, why not do a modernization? But they were using Pride and Prejudice as their example. And I'm like, they already did a black modernization of Pride and Prejudice. Pride and Prejudice Atlanta. That's what made me decided to do this video, because I was like, I need to give these adaptations their flowers. I like that we got to see like these adaptations with different takes on them, fresh takes on them, and just if you don't like it, there are other adaptations to go watch. I've watched the other adaptations, I've enjoyed them. I just think it's funny how like everybody's all of a sudden concerned about accuracy when it changes in skin color. But the adaptations y'all are upholding, they made changes to the story too. Some that didn't even make no sense, but y'all wasn't sitting up here complaining and crying about them either. They're great adaptations, don't get me wrong. But overall, I did enjoy both movies. I thought they were great. And I wouldn't mind getting more black adaptations of classic books. That's another thing I saw. Some critics were like, why y'all gotta take the classics and, make them black? Why not just do original black stories from the time period that were like from that time period? And me personally, I'll take both. I'll take it all. I'll take black adaptations of classics. I'll take adaptations of original black works from those time periods. I'll take it all. I will watch it all. I'll enjoy it all. I don't care. Those were my thoughts on these 2 adaptations. I thought they were wonderful. I'm glad that they tried something new. And I wouldn't mind getting more adaptations like them. And so thank you for tuning into this video. If you liked it, give it a like, a comment, and a subscribe. And be sure to check out more content on my channel, and I'll see you next time.